Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show. Hey, Jai Picks, the other half of the show, the parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC Vegas 92. Let's get in. We're back at the Apex. 12 fights on this week's Fight Night card to break down. Before we do that, let's talk about UFC St. Louis. You were there in attendance. I was here in Florida crying my eyes out because I was getting absolutely smoked. It was a rough card for me. A real doozy of a card. Got burned onto Spain. Got burned on a couple props that I felt like should have hit. And then, a couple other bets that did not go my way. Two fights that went to the distance that I didn't think had a chance to go the distance, but they both did. They both screwed my parlay. So it was a rough night for me. I went down 6.5 units. I think I was due for a bad week because I was on a big hot streak. Went up 8 units, UFC 301 the week before that. So you take the lumps and you move on. And luckily, we got a card this week where I can try to get some of that back because it always sucks when you have a bad week and then there's no UFC card. So we got one this week. We'll try to bounce back. How to go for you? How to go be in there live?
Yeah, first it was a lot of fun. We've been to a lot of UFC events in the last couple of years, but St. Louis, you could tell they hadn't had a card in forever. Crowd was insane. They were backing Buckley, Charles Johnson, Sean Woodson, like crazy, dude. Like they were going insane in the crowd. So that was a lot of fun to be a part of. And on the night, I went up 5.4 units. I went a little like different strategy this week. I picked my 2 fighters I was most confident in, and I hammered them. I put 5 units on Derek Lewis and 3 units on Veronica Hardy, and both those cashed. Also hit Charles Johnson as the underdog. I also had Tisha Pennington as a decent underdog too, and I thought she had a good chance to get her name called there in that split decision. But at the end of the day, if you're holding a decent underdog ticket and they give you a split decision, I think it's a pretty decent bet. And, you at least give yourself a chance. So, yeah, 5.4 units, though. It felt good. Another live event being profitable, that always makes it more fun, a more fun experience. So I'm looking to keep it rolling. I feel really good about this card, too, even though it's low level. Sometimes it's easy to kind of read what's going to happen in these fights. So,
yeah, these are some pretty low-level fights. And if you look at these matchups, it looks like the UFC is trying to pick who's going to win. And the odds somewhat entail that because you got a lot of guys that are somewhat prospects, maybe coming off a loss, and then they're matching them up with these lower level guys. And it looks like the UFC is trying to set them up for a win. Just a quick win to get their confidence back, get them on with a win under their belt to keep moving on. But some debuts, really not anything crazy. Co-main event, Chaos Williams, Carlston Harris. It's a tough co-main event. The main event, though, I do enjoy the main event. Edson Barboza, Lerone Murphy. Lerone Murphy's still undefeated. Barboza is coming off 2 straight wins. One was against Sadiq Youssef in the Apex, which was a 5-rounder. He won that. And then knockout win over Billy Q. So that's a good fight. We'll talk about that one later. We're going to go through, break down every single fight on the card. We'll give you a pick. If you want the bets, jump in the Home of Fight Picks membership. The link is down in the description below. Without any further ado, don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's jump into it with the first fight of the night. Vanessa Demopolous, once again, coming in as an underdog against Emily Ducote. Sits at minus 325. Ducote, 30 years of age. I believe she's, 2-2 in the UFC. She's coming off a win from against Ashley Yoder. And Ashley Yoder at the time was 8-8 and then got cut. So that's her most recent win. She was a minus 400 favorite. She got that win fairly decisively, but it was somewhat competitive on the feet. Before that, her only 2 losses in the UFC, Lupe Godinez and Angela Hill. So not scrubs. And then we look at Vanessa Demopolous. She's coming off a controversial win against Kanako Murata, where she was kind of on her back for most of the fight, but she was pretty aggressive with her guard, and Murata wasn't doing much on top, and it ended up that Vanessa Demopolous gets the win. Pretty shocking call there from the judges. I can somewhat see what they were trying to get at. Murata had 10 minutes of control time, and somehow Vanessa Demopolous still pulled off a win by decision. So interesting there. Vanessa's 35. A big underdog here. I mean, this is a women's MMA fight. Last week we saw it where it's like super just subjective with the scoring, like the Ricci Pennington fight. And now we're kind of getting a similar thing here, but a wider line. You think there's any value on Demopolous?
I feel like there always is because I mean, if you go and look at her fight odds history, she loses or sorry, she beats Murata in her last fight is plus 320 is what it closed at. And before that loses to Karolina Kowalkiewicz in a line that was pretty close. Maria Oliveira line basically pick 'em. Jin Yu Frey, she was plus 200. She cashes there. She even opened as a slight underdog against Silvana Gomez Juarez, like right at plus 100 or so. So yeah, man, she cashes tickets when she's not supposed to. A lot of the other fights that she's lost, it's been pick 'em or she's a massive underdog. But I'll tell you, I watched her last fight against Murata, and I think you took her as well. Were you on her big plus money? And I'm at dinner.
Cash it, man. It was like,
Yeah, dude. I'm at dinner with my wife for our anniversary dinner. I got the phone snuck under the table, watching the fight halfway, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna turn this off because there's no chance she won the fight.
yeah.
It wasn't until like 2 hours later where I looked and I'm like, holy shit, I won that. I was like, what the fuck happened? So I went back and I looked, and sure enough, Vanessa Demopolous gets the decision win. So, she's always gives herself a chance with the ground game and the submission threat. She's very good. She's good off of her back. She'll go for the arm bars. Really, I mean, on the feet, she's not the best striker in the world. She's got a little sting to her shots. She'll try to set up her striking and then roll into a leg or do whatever she can to get the fight to the ground. And I really think she's going to have to get it there because Ducote, I've got mixed opinions and feelings on Ducote, but regardless of how I feel about her as a total fighter, I do think she is a good striker, and I do think she's going to be a lot better than Demopolous here. It's just you never know what kind of Emily Ducote is going to show up. Like she comes out there and looks like a savage against Jessica Pinheiro, in her debut, kicked the leg off. I mean, had her basically compromised very early on in the fight, and then just outstruck her by a mile all the way to a decision. I'm surprised she couldn't finish that fight because Jessica was just, literally on one leg. So
yeah.
After that, she goes in against Angela Hill, gets absolutely pieced up for 3 rounds, goes in against Lupi Godinez, loses a unanimous decision there. I think they thought she was a lot better than she was after her debut, and they kind of threw her into these, seasoned vets and girls that are a little bit closer to the top 15 and on. So then she beats Ashley Yoder, which she should have, in kind of a close fight striking wise. So now she's back to Vanessa Demopolous, who she's supposed to be better than, on the feet will be better than, but if Ducote shows up kind of lackadaisical and Demopolous gets the back or even gets her on the ground, this is going to be an interesting fight. For the pick, though, I'm going Emily Ducote. I expect her to be working on things she needs to improve on, and that's just in this fight, keeping the fight on the feet and letting her hands and kick game start going to work, and she should be able to get another win here.
Yeah, the thing I like about Demopolous is she's super tough. She's kind of, I mean, she was a stripper, so she's got to be tough. Like she's kind of a junkyard dog. So I like her forward movement too. And when she throws with a lot of intent. The problem is she's got a 59.5-inch reach, so it's not like she can really land a lot of those strikes. She's usually got these T-Rex arms. She's throwing hooks and looking to try to get the fight to the ground, but not really like panic shooting. Like she will stand and strike with you. She'll try to mix it in. She doesn't really have great takedowns. She's got good jiu-jitsu. But in this fight, I think Ducote will just be better on the feet. And I don't think Ducote's really going to be looking for takedowns like Kanako Murata was. Like Murata took her down, but did nothing with it and lost that way. If you look at who Demopolous loses to, it's just girls that are better strikers than her or able to mix in a takedown and hold her there for some, but outstrike her on the feet. And yeah, she has won fights where she got outstruck on the feet, but she was also landing some pretty devastating shots too, like land a knockdown or like she has a decent overhand. If she continually lands the overhand, then she's gonna have a chance to win this fight. But Ducote is probably just gonna rack up 100, 120, maybe even 140, 150 significant strikes if this fight's on the feet for 15 minutes, it's probably just going to be too much. Now, at the current odds, I just can't really have that much confidence in it because Ducote gets hit a lot herself. She's not really a really super clean striker where she doesn't get hit. So Demopolous will be there to put the damage back to her. And who knows, maybe she could cut her open with something and then you get into the damage game. That's really just why I wouldn't want to play Ducote at minus 325 because I think this fight probably goes to decision and then it's in the hands of the judges. And in women's MMA, it's so tough to really tell sometimes. The judges just kind of go. You never know what the judges are going to do. So for a pick, I'm going to go to Cody. I think she should be able to get a win, but not playing that price by any means. Moving on, we got Alatangheili coming in as the underdog against Clayton Rodrigues, sitting at minus 170. Rodrigues moved up to 135 his last time out, got submitted by Farid Basharat. Not the worst thing to happen because Farid, pretty damn good. Javid did not look good his last time out, but Farid is still undefeated. And Rodrigues staying at 135 against Alatangheili, who looked terrible in his last time out. Granted, it was against Chris Gutierrez, who, if you don't have really good skills or an ability to, if you're not on his level, Chris Gutierrez is going to pick you apart for 3 rounds because he stays at range and you can't close it. Alatangheili could not close it. He lost that fight in a very boring one-sided decision. He comes in here not as a big dog. Clayton really needs to find a win because he's 1-2 in the UFC. His only win is Shannon Ross. Yeah, his only win is Shannon Ross. So he's a favorite here. Do you think that's warranted?
I mean, honestly, before looking at the odds, you look at the matchup between these guys. I thought it'd be closer to a pick'em or, Alatangheili, maybe slight favorite just because of the experience and who he's fought compared to Rodrigues, who, like you said, he needs a win. For being a minus 170 over a guy who's got experience like this in the UFC, he's yet to really show us that he deserves to be a favorite in a fight at this level because on the Contender Series, he dominated, Curatalo, went to a decision, though, gets a contract, comes in, loses to CJ Vergara, who has been very up and down. He's knocking out guys that he should. Like, what's the guy's name that has lost every fight after almost winning? Brazilian kid. Oh, crap. Daniel Lacerda.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like CJ Vergara gets wins over like guys like that and Vinicius Salvador, who we'll talk about later. And then he comes in here and he wins a split decision against Rodrigues. Rodrigues' only UFC win comes against a guy who's also been knocked out every time he steps into the octagon. And then he got a tough test in Basharat. So, yeah, I think he needs a win badly. I think he's very skilled. He's very athletic and explosive. His striking is very good, and you can tell he's got some power. But going up against a guy like Alatangheili, who has good wrestling, who's got power in his hands as well, I think it's going to be a tough ask for him. Being a minus 170 favorite, Alatangheili can take some big shots as well. So if Rodrigues comes in there and starts cracking, and he's not putting Alatangheili away, and maybe he uses too much energy, and Alatangheili starts timing his shots and ducking under some big hooks and gets some takedowns, I think this fight's going to look very, very close. For the experience, edge, and factor here, I'm going to pick Alatangheili. And it's not like he's like going to be completely outmatched on the feet. Like, the guy has some decent technical boxing and he's got a powerful right hook. So I don't think he's, a fish out of water by any means. But I do think if he gets on top of Clayton Rodrigues, I do think he's a very strong guy. And if he has top position, I think it's going to be harder for Rodrigues to get back to his feet than people think. And, once he does, I think Alatangheili is just going to try to rinse and repeat and get him back down. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Alatangheili here. He's shown me more that I like than Rodrigues, but that's not to say like it's a super confident pick by any means, because if you look at Alatangheili's wins, they're against guys like Chad Anhelinger, who is coming off of a win, but he's not the highest level opponent, Kevin Kroom, who's not good, and Ryan Benoit and Dana Batgari, who is out of the UFC now too. So, yeah, not a confident pick, but at this price, I got to play the line and take Alatangheili.
Yeah, it's just super low level in my opinion, and it's really tough to get a read because I think Clayton Rodrigues is the favorite based on like his potential. because we kind of know what Alatangheili is at this point. Like, he's not really going to get much better. He's kind of just a guy that's going to walk you down, take one to give one, and maybe mix in some wrestling. Clayton, I think, is probably a little bit sharper of a striker, better grappler, not a better wrestler, but a better jiu-jitsu player. And he's younger. I think the possibilities for Rodrigues to move up in the bantamweight division is a little bit higher. I'll take Rodrigues, but this is one that I don't know that I'll really have a side in, because Rodrigues. I think he's okay, but like, his losses in the UFC. I mean, his last loss, I can't really hold over him because I think that was just a terrible matchup. And at 135, I think he should be better.
Yeah.
But Alatangheili, like, his wins in the UFC aren't good, so I can't really like give him credit for that. And matchup wise, I think it's probably a fight that plays out on the feet. Honestly, I don't think either guy's really going to shoot unless it's unless they're hurt. So I think Alatangheili is going to get his face busted up, and he's not going to wear the damage very well. So I'm going to take Rodrigues for the pick.
Yeah, and for me, like Rodrigues, if this thing does stay on the feet, I think from a volume aspect, like if it goes all 3 rounds, I expect him to win. But Alatangheili, I'd be so much more inclined to play him as an underdog if he just had some kind of submission game. Like, he can get takedowns, but he does nothing with it. He does absolutely nothing with it, and it's frustrating. So it's kind of one of those damage over control type fights too. I feel like it could play out like that. And if you like to bet on the damage fighters, I think Rodrigues is probably your guy.
Agreed. Moving on, we got Pierre Rodrigues taking on Ariane Carnelossi. The return of the biceps and the traps. I mean, if Carnelossi shaved her head, that's a dude, man. I mean, it might be a dude with a wig on at this point. Like,
yeah, she's jacked.
Good Lord. I mean, you see the pipes on the screen, you see the traps on the screen. She is 5'2", so I mean, she could fill out that 5'2" frame with a lot of muscle mass, and she's got it. But she's the dog here. She hasn't fought in 2 years, and I guess, I mean, she's coming back after USADA's gone, so maybe that has something to do with it. But she's taking on Pierre Rodrigues, who's 2-1 in the UFC, coming off her first loss against Jillian Robertson. She's the favorite. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I actually grabbed Pierre Rodrigues 2 days ago, when everybody's still eyeing UFC St. Louis, because she was minus 135. And I just think, Carnelossi, 2-year layoff. Yeah, she's jacked. Yeah, she's big. I think she's going to slow down in fights. She's got a couple of wins in the UFC, but, it's Estela Nunez by submission and Na Liang by KO, who everybody has knocked out or submitted. I mean, it was in the second round too, and it's a typical Na Liang fight. First round's fun. She's absolutely death gases, and then the second round she gets finished. Loses to Angela Hill by TKO in the third round. I think Carnelossi is very dangerous early in fights. She's got some power in her hands. She'll mix in takedowns as well. She's very strong. She's just able to drag girls down. But up against the girl in Pierre Rodrigues, who can also grapple, who can also strike and has some power. The one thing that I can really key in on is if they stay on the feet, Carnelossi has a terrible striking differential. Like, she gets hit way more than she lands. And if Pierre decides to wrestle, Carnelossi's got an 8% takedown defense. We've seen her taken down before by Lupe Godinez 8 times, just at ease. She was taken down 3 times in that first round by Na Liang. So, if those girls are taking her down that many times, I have faith that Pierre Rodrigues is going to have success in the wrestling department if she goes to it. And if she doesn't, I think on the feet, she's going to have success as well. Ariane Carnelossi is there to be hit, and Pierre does have some decent, solid striking. So I'm not impressed with either of these girls' wins in the UFC. Honestly, this is lower level so far. I think Pierre Rodrigues has more upside as a fighter going forward. And I like the line I got her at, because I thought she'd probably grow as a little bit bigger of a favorite. So, yeah, I got Pierre here.
Yeah, I think based on what we've seen from both ladies, you have to go Pierre Rodrigues, just based on the fact that both of Carnelossi's UFC wins combined for an 0-8 UFC record. 0-8. So she's beating the bottom of the barrel. And if you watch that fight with Estela Nunez, Estela Nunez was winning that fight until she got submitted with, 2.5 minutes left. So
yeah,
she was losing, and then she pulled it out with a round 3 sub. And then that last fight against Lupi, she was just getting ragdolled. Like, for as much muscle as this girl's got on her, she was getting ragdolled by Lupi Godinez. So muscles don't always win your fights. Just ask William Knight that. And Pierre Rodrigues is actually pretty decent. She's got good skills on the feet. She can mix in the takedowns. I'll take Pierre Rodrigues for the pick. That's a good line that you got her at. That's damn good. I think that's a steal right there, because I think Pierre Rodrigues, maybe a minus 200 favorite, would be probably what I would put her at. So maybe there's some value left on her at this point, but I'll take her for the pick. And the only thing I'm scared of is, maybe Carnelossi comes back after 2 years off and she looks a lot improved, but you can't always bank on that. And Pierre Rodrigues just looks like the better fighter at this point.
Yeah, I mean, she opened at a minus 120, and I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at Carnelossi and her wins and her performances. Pierre Rodrigues lost to Jillian Robertson, but up until she got subbed, it wasn't a complete mismatch. And I don't know, Jillian, if she gets you on the ground, can sub anybody. So yeah, I felt like I had to pull the trigger.
Agreed. Moving on, we got Melissa Gatto coming in as a big favorite over Tamirez Vidal. So Melissa Gatto was supposed to fight at Atlantic City. She was supposed to fight Ducote at 125. Ducote pulled out. Melissa Gatto doesn't have a fight, so it looks like she wanted to get a fight. I think Vidal was supposed to take on Haley Cowan in this spot, and then Haley Cowan pulled out once again, and in steps Melissa Gatto. So she's fighting at 135. Tamirez Vidal is normally a 135er. So I would assume Vidal is going to be a bit bigger, at least a little bit thicker, maybe a little bit stronger. She's a big favorite here. She's coming off a loss against Montserrat Rendon, where she was a big favorite. Now she's a big dog. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I want to see her what Vidal looks like a little bit closer to weigh-ins, because against Rendon coming into the fight, and I picked Vidal to beat Rendon, but she just looked a little out of shape to me, if I'm being honest. And she went in there, and Rendon kind of put the pressure on her, worked in the grappling, and tried to get some takedowns. And Vidal just had nothing with the gas tank. Like, she couldn't get up off of her back. She on the feet looks slow and sluggish. And if she does that here against Gatto, I think Gatto is going to have her way with her. And Gatto has that style to where she can hang with you on the feet. She throws lands nearly 4 significant strikes per minute. Her striking's not bad. But she's a strong girl too, and she can get takedowns. And if she gets on top, she's very good with the jiu-jitsu, and she'll make you work to try to get back to your feet. If she does that here earlier in the fight, I think this is going to look similar to the Rendon fight, but even worse, because if Vidal starts the gas against Gatto, Gatto's way more dangerous than Rendon is with the submission game. Even with the striking, her striking is way better than Rendon's. So, if Vidal comes out here and keeps it on the feet, I think it's going to be a close fight through the first 1.5 rounds, because Vidal is a good striker. She's got some pop in her hands, but I think Melissa Gatto is too experienced, too good, too strong, really. I think she's going to be a similar style when it gets up against the cage that Rendon was able to implement and just drag her to the ground. And for that reason, man, I'm going Melissa Gatto. I'm not betting it at all. This is a minus 430 women's MMA. Like, if you're betting her at minus 430 or putting her in parlays, just think twice about that, because we see these kind of favorites lose all the time. But for the pick, I think she beats Vidal.
Yeah, I think she's down to like minus 350 now. I mean, Melissa Gatto, skill for skill, I think is levels above Tamirez Vidal, and that's maybe why you see the number that way. But this is women's MMA, and I think a weight class makes a bit of a difference, because she's normally the bigger fighter against these 125ers, and she can use her physicality. She hits a lot harder than the 125ers. Moving up to 135, even if it's just a one-off, Tamirez Vidal, pretty built girl. Like, she's not muscled up like a Melissa Gatto, but she's pretty thick. She's thick. Like, she's not going to have her way as far as, getting her up against the cage and landing takedowns, or when she hits her, it's not going to have that same sting. And when she gets hit by Tamirez Vidal, it's going to be a bigger sting. So the price tag really scares me for Gatto. She'll be the pick for me, but Tamirez Vidal, she shouldn't be this big of a dog. I don't think. I think that has to do with, her last loss. And Melissa Gatto's really hasn't won a fight since in what, 2 years? Like her last win was 2021.
Yeah.
So she's on a 2-fight losing streak against good competition, but yeah, I don't know. Even minus 350 just seems a bit pricey. She'll be the pick, but be careful. Moving on, we got Victor Martinez coming in as a big dog as well against Tom Nolan, who sits at minus 475. Tom Nolan coming back after getting knocked out in his UFC debut. Jesus, Tom Nolan. This dude was what? I think he was undefeated. Australian guy. Had a big knockout on the Contender Series. They match him up with Nicholas Mata. Nicholas Mata just got pieced up by Trey Ogden. They're like, here you go, Tom Nolan. Knock out Nicholas Mata in your UFC debut. He's like a minus 350, minus 400 favorite. Dude gets knocked out. So then they're like, all right, who we got on the roster that, maybe shouldn't have been signed to the UFC? We got Victor Martinez, who got knocked out by Jordan Levitt. So if Tom Nolan can't knock out this guy, then we got some problems. And he should be able to knock out Victor Martinez. Because Victor Martinez in his UFC debut got knocked out as well by Jordan Levitt. And honestly, if you watch his Contender Series fight or any of his fights on the regional scene, the guy's really not that good. Like, he's pretty one-dimensional boxer.
Yeah.
Small for the weight class, 5'8", 70-inch reach. Tom Nolan 6'3". Big power, but he did show his last time out he can throw a little wild and he can get caught. So, at minus 475, it's a little sketchy. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if Victor Martinez showed that he's got more power in his hands, then maybe maybe you could play his knockout prop just to get a crazy number. But even on the Contender Series, he landed 144 significant strikes. The volume was good and the boxing was good. Got the decision win. But I mean, even in that fight, he was getting dropped, and he's been beaten on the regional scenes before. For Tom Nolan, I think this is just UFC's way of saying, we want you in the win column. He had a huge fight on the Contender Series where he looked very good on the feet. He's very slick with his striking, and he's very powerful. I think he just came into the UFC and off of a lot of momentum from that knockout on Contender Series and just kind of forgot about the striking defense and went full offense. I think he's probably learned a lot from that knockout loss to Mata. I think he is going to be a good fighter. I think if he puts together the striking defense, he's going to be very hard to beat on the feet. And I don't really think a guy like Victor Martinez has much of a wrestling game to kind of neutralize that offensive striking of Tom Nolan. Tom Nolan's going to be stronger. Way bigger, 6'3" versus 5'8". I just don't see Victor Martinez having much of a prayer here, if I'm being honest. Bounce back spot for Tom Nolan, comes in here, probably gets the knockout too.
Yeah, I want to find a way for Victor Martinez to win this fight. And I guess you could maybe say knockout, but I just don't see it. You watch the film on the guy, he doesn't really throw that hard. And he's a decent boxer. Maybe he could outbox him, but I mean, he's got a decent reach, for 5'8", 70 inches. But I think Tom Nolan probably gets this guy out of there and rights his wrongs from his UFC debut. So Tom Nolan will be the pick.
I mean, when you're getting knocked out by Jordan Levitt, if Tom Nolan doesn't knock him out and even wins a decision, like I was telling you, that's a loss for him.
Yeah, that's an L on the night for Tom Nolan. He needs the KO badly.
Yeah.
Moving on, we got Abus Magomedov coming in at minus 280 against Warley Alves. Abus now on a 2-fight losing streak after he lost to Kyle Bahalio his last time out, and then before that, death gas against Sean Strickland. So it's another one of these fights where they're like, all right, this guy's been in some high-profile fights. Magomedov, that is. It's on a 2-fight losing streak. We got to match him up with somebody. Get this guy back in the win column. Let's give him Warley Alves, who's on a 3-fight losing streak and just got knocked out brutally by Ikram Alaskarov. Now, granted, for Warley Alves, he's not losing to terrible guys like Ikram, Nicholas Dalby, Jeremiah Wells. Not terrible competition. But he hasn't had a win since 2021. Abus is a big favorite here. It looks like Abus should be able to knock him out, but can you really trust this guy at this point? He lasted what was it, 1.5 rounds against Sean Strickland? Good Lord. Good Lord. I don't know. Minus 280 seems a little sketchy. What are you thinking?
Yeah. for Abus, this is kind of the one reason I feel bad for the guy is because he beats Dustin Stoltzfus in his debut very early, with the front kick right to the mouth. And everybody sees the Magomedov name and they throw him in against Sean Strickland. Like, it's pre Sean Strickland being the champion, but still, like, you're going up against a top 5 guy in your second fight in the UFC. And I'm pretty sure Sean Strickland was only like minus 170. Like, the line wasn't that crazy. And I bet Sean Strickland there. But, Abus loses to him, completely gasses out, and then goes in there against Kaio, which is another guy who's on a crazy streak right now and is surging through the rankings and is like destined to be in the top of that division too. Like, that's his third fight and he takes another loss. So I think he could bounce back here against Warley Alves. I think Warley Alves is, he's not that old, but he's got a lot of miles on that UFC record. I mean, this guy came in and beat Colby Covington back in 2015. And I think in one of his first UFC fights. And he's fought in the Kamaru Usmans, Randy Brown was a loss, and then his last 3 losses all come to very good fighters in Alaskarov, Nicholas Dalby, and Jeremiah Wells. So, I think if Abus comes out here, he can definitely find the knockout early. But if Warley Alves decides to just put him against the cage and make him work, I think that's his path to victory as an underdog here. He's got to make Abus work, and he's got to stay out of striking range with him because, we have seen Abus get very tired in his past couple of fights, one due to just, trying to keep up with that Sean Strickland pace, and the other one just from getting, put up against the cage and kind of pushed around by Kaio. So if Warley can kind of learn some things from those 2 fights and just try to make it out of the first round, I think this fight gets a lot closer and you can maybe look at live betting him. But I also believe Abus could come out here and absolutely decapitate Alves in the first round. So I'm going to take Abus to get a little bounce back win here, but definitely not going to be surprised if you look up and it's a third round and Warley Alves is on his back or has him on the ground and is just raining down ground and pounder looking for subs. So, give me Abus for the pick. If it gets past 1.5 rounds, probably going to be live betting Mr. Warley Alves there.
Yeah, Warley it's crazy to think they're the same age because Warley looks like he's like 50.
Yeah.
All day.
I know. I hear Warley Alves and I'm like, oh, there's another 39-year-old fighter.
Yeah.
But he's only like, what, 33 or 4?
33. He's been in the UFC since 2014. So, I mean, I don't know. I think Warley's kind of live here because notoriously he's been fairly durable. Like, it takes a bit to get him out of there. Like, before this last fight, he's never been knocked out in the first round. But it was a pretty devastating KO he got hit with against Ikram.
And Ikram's an animal, man.
Ikram is an animal, and definitely levels above Abus Magomedov, I believe. But it is tough to hold those last 2 losses against Magomedov. But at the same time, like, he was kind of crushing cans before he got to the UFC. So it's really hard to look and see like what his good wins are. So I don't know. I think Warley Alves is pretty live. As far as clean, like the cleaner striker, I think Magomedov is that. I think he's really solid with his kicks. But, the gas tank might not be there. I don't think his wrestling is really that good. So I'd probably lean dog or pass if I was going to bet it. But I'll take Magomedov for the pick. I'll bitch out after everything I just said. Take Magomedov. Moving on, we got Themba Gorimbo. I believe he's not minus 220 anymore. Looking at it right now, Themba Gorimbo is minus 135. Ramiz Brahimaj is plus 105. Brahimaj he took a lot of time off since his last fight. He's coming off a win against Michael Gilmore. The legend Michael Gilmore, if you know what I'm talking about. Michael Gilmore, I think he was the guy that got
filled in on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, he filled in on the Ultimate Fighter, and they got subbed. And then they're like, all right, we got to give this guy
here's Andre Petrosky.
Yeah, they give him Petrosky in his debut. He gets finished. And then they give him Ramiz Brahimaj for one more. He gets finished in that. So
without a single strike being landed in that fight.
Yeah, that was Brahimaj's last win, and that was 2022. So he's been off for 2 years, and all of his wins come by submission. So he's 10-4. All 10 wins come by submission. 9 in the first round.
Yeah,
and 1 in the second round. So you know the game plan from Brahimaj. He wants to get you to the ground, sub you in the first round. Themba Gorimbo, back-to-back wins for him. coming off a big knockout win in the first round against P. Rodrigues within 32 seconds. So some actions coming in on Brahimaj. Timba Gorimbo was a big favorite. Now he's down to minus 135. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I think the line where it is now is a lot more reasonable than what it opened as, and Timba being that big of a favorite because Brahimaj has the style of a fighter that Timba lost to. AJ Fletcher was able to take him down, and AJ Fletcher's not like a big submission guy. He's not going out there, and his whole game's not like a submission based style. So he was able to get a guillotine off on Timbo when Timbo was trying to get the takedown, and he lost that fight. So that kind of gives people hope, I think, for Brahimaj to possibly do the same. Brahimaj is going to have a stronger wrestling game. I think if he gets takedowns early in the fight, he's definitely going to have chances to submit Gorimbo. But I think also as the fight goes on and that submission doesn't come, I think this is going to be Timba kind of taking over. It looked like Timba learned from his previous loss, and he goes out there and he beats Takashi Sato, and then he comes out and shows that he'd been working on his striking and absolutely decapitates Pete Rodrigues in the first round in his last win. But again, Takashi Sato win and Pete Rodrigues win aren't the best in the UFC. Pete Rodrigues, very undersized, very short for that division, and caught a big right hand. Takashi Sato has been knocked out by a lot of people. So this is going to be a test for Timba for sure. But at the same time, like I look and I think who the UFC would want to win this fight. And I do think it's Gorimbo. I think, if the matchmakers are trying to get him wins, maybe they see something that I'm missing in this fight. I think Timba probably going to be the longer striker. Might make it a little boring after the first round. He's not a guy outside of his last win to Pete Rodrigues. He's not really a guy that's out there head hunting or just going for finish after finish. But I do think he's going to have better cardio here. I do think, his wrestling is good enough to where he can compete with Brahimaj. If he makes a mistake and puts himself in a bad position, he can definitely get submitted. But I'm going to go with Timba Gorimbo. I think he's probably made some improvements. He's been working pretty hard on his game, I believe. And I think overall, for over the course of 3 rounds, I think he'll be the more solid fighter.
Yeah, the only thing I'm worried about for Gorimbo is he's been submitted a few times in his in his UFC career. He's been submitted once, but in his professional career, he's been submitted a few times. And it's the blitz off the jump from Brahimaj that is scary. And Gorimbo was the guy that really initiated the grappling against AJ Fletcher and got his neck caught in that guillotine. So if Gorimbo goes in there kind of careless with, a takedown or he gets takedown early and he's a little bit careless, he can get subbed in the first round. But I think Tembo's a much better overall fighter at this point. I believe Brahimaj is coming off of a pretty bad injury that he sustained at the beginning of 2023. And that was part of his long layoff. So that's never good. And overall, I mean, his wins in the UFC are Michael Gilmore and Sasha Palatnikov. So nobody good that he's beaten in the UFC. I'll take Timba in this one and hope to see him win. He's a guy that you always want to root for. And, if I watch an interview of this guy at like media day, I'm sure I'll probably be convinced to bet on Timba Gorimbo because he's probably going to write down on his notes or something. He's going to knock out him first and then go out and do it. So, yeah, I'll take Timba.
It's definitely possible here too. Honestly, like the more I think about it, a lot of Brahimaj's wins. I mean, even the one against Sasha, that was a first round submission where only 2 strikes were landed the whole fight. Michael Gilmore, only 1 strike or 0 strikes landed in that fight. Like if he rushes in, Timba could catch him the same way he did Pete Rodrigues too.
Yep. Moving on, we got Luana Pinheiro coming in as the underdog against Angela Hill. Angela Hill is 39 years of age, but showing no signs of slowing down because she just picked up a win against Denise Gome, who was on a nice little win streak in the UFC. And here she is taking on Luana Pinheiro, who is coming off a loss against Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas knocked her out in the 3rd round after Luana Pinheiro was kind of putting it on her for the first round. Second round was pretty good for Luana, and then she started to gas out a little bit. She gets hit. She gets hit with a nice little spinning wheel kick, and she gets put out of there. So she's got to bounce back after her win streak was snapped. She's the dog here against Angela Hill. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I was hoping Angie was going to be the dog, so I could put some money on her. I like betting Angela Hill as the underdog. Minus 165. It's a little steep for me, considering she's a little bit older. Luana Pinheiro, outside of the Hebos loss, she was undefeated on Contender Series and in the UFC so far. She hasn't beaten really the best competition. I mean, Sam Hughes got the win there by decision, split decision over Michelle Waterson Gomez. And, Michelle Waterson in her last few fights has just looked a step slower than she used to. She's kind of small. And that was somewhat of a close fight where, honestly, I had Michelle Waterson as a plus, I want to say like 170 dog-ish there. And I thought she won. She outstruck her 61-44. Fight was extremely close, though. So if she comes in here and this is a standing affair with Angela Hill, like Angela Hill's tough as nails for one. Volume wise, she throws a ton of strikes. She's not really out there knocking anybody out throughout her whole entire career. Like it's been a while. It's been at least 4 years. But if she gets in that flow state and you're there to be hit, Angela Hill is very, very talented and technical with her striking. And to the judges, like in women's MMA, if you take a girl who's doesn't have the best volume, maybe looking for some takedowns where she doesn't have a lot of success, compared to an Angela Hill who's just constantly throwing something at you and constantly hitting you and touching you up, I think it looks good to him. And in this fight, like if Luana doesn't have success on the feet if she doesn't have success trying to get Angela to the ground here, I think she's just going to get outpointed to a decision loss. So for the pick, I'm taking Angela Hill. Not going to be surprised if we see an underdog cash here. Don't really like the line. Probably not betting this fight, but for the pick, I'm taking Angie.
Yeah, it's a weird one because I think Angela Hill probably wins on volume, but Luana Pinheiro, I don't really know what happened her last fight. Like, she's not really one to gas out. I know Amanda Hebas says really good cardio. She's a girl that's always going to keep coming forward, always throws a ton of volume. And maybe that just got to her. Like, she was cracking the shit out of Amanda Hebas and then just kind of fell off a cliff. I don't know if she was just trying to run around the cage for the last round and just secure a win, and then she got caught. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Angela Hill, just based on the fact that she'll have more volume. I think her wrestling and her grappling is improving over the past 3 or 4 years, and Luana Pinheiro doesn't really have crazy good skills in my opinion. Like, she has a good overhand right. She's got some decent judo throws. But as far as submissions go, not really seeing it in the UFC. And the only chick she knocked out was on the Contender Series. So probably goes to a decision, and it's probably Angela Hill. But I do look at Angela Hill's record, and she hasn't had good luck in the Apex. Her loss to Dern was in the Apex. Her last 3 wins were not at the Apex. And then you look at her other fights, their losses at the Apex. So maybe that's just the smaller cage doesn't work out well for Angela Hill or what, because I know she likes to stay to the outside. But either way, I'll take her for the pick. I want to watch this line, though, just kind of see where it moves. I'm looking at it right now. Angela Hill's minus 135. So, if maybe it continues that way and you get Angela Hill at a pick 'em or even dog money, then I'd probably sign up. But, minus 165, I wouldn't touch it. Minus 135 is a little bit sweeter, but I'll take her for the pick.
Yeah, she just got so much experience too. Like,
Yeah.
she's seen every kind of style. She beat Loma Bunmi. She's beaten Lupi Godinez recently, like in the last 2 years. Emily Ducote, she put a clinic on, and even her last win over Denise Gomes, where she outstruck her. She took Denise Gomes down 5 times, showed a full game there. So, yeah, I think she's a girl that's kind of, if you look at her record, she's on a 3-fight losing streak, and now she's 3-1. Kind of getting a little bit better, maybe too, at this age. Even I think she's starting to put it all together at least. So against the Luana Pinheiro, I think she should have the skills to win, and if not, I think it's gonna be pretty close.
She beat your girl Loma. That's why you like
That's
her.
my girl, man. Loma's tough. Loma's a tough ass.
Oh man, I'm always gonna say that when Loma gets brought up.
I love Loma, bro. This is like my favorite. She's made me so much money.
We move on. Adrian Yanez coming in as a big favorite against Vinicius Salvador, who's moving up to 135. His last fight was against the legend, CJ Vergara. and he took a loss. His 2 fights in the UFC, both losses, both pretty close decisions, where he won 1 round but lost 2. So in this one, he's going to try to win 2 out of 3. Otherwise, he's walking away with an L. He's taking on Adrian Yanez. Adrian Yanez, big, massive step down here in competition. Because he was fighting Rob Font, who was top 10 in the bantamweight division. Then he fought Jonathan Martinez, top 15. Now he's fighting an 0-2 Vinicius Salvador, who's moving up a weight class. And he's sitting at minus 375. What do you think?
Yeah. So, I have a feeling the UFC called Adrian here and was like, look, if you can't beat Vinicius Salvador, maybe the UFC isn't for you, because this has got to be, this couldn't be more of a gift wrapped fight for Adrian Yanez to get back in the win column. I think, Adrian, at one point, if you remember, they were talking about him versus Sean O'Malley. Like, people were saying, like, that's the next fight to make. Adrian Yanez versus Sean O'Malley. And look how that went. You got one guy who's sitting at the very tip top and Adrian Yanez down in the dumps. Like, he went into that Rob Font fight and got knocked out in the first round. Like, Rob Font isn't knocking people out in the first round, like, for a long time, since Marlon Moraes, who had no chin. So, it comes back into a fight against Jonathan Martinez, and looking back, like, that should have been a max play on Jonathan Martinez. Jonathan Martinez absolutely kicked the legs off. Adrian Yanez has that boxing style where he's always front foot heavy and, isn't used to trying to check kicks like that. So this fight against Vinicius Salvador is, should be a layup, because Salvador is going to have this thing on the feet. That's exactly where Yanez wants it. He's not the most powerful guy in the world. Like, he was getting pieced up by Shannon Ross on the Contender Series in a round, and then he finally knocks him down a couple of times. It took him, damn near 10 minutes to do so, where it's taken everybody else 20 seconds. So I don't think Vinicius Salvador had much power at 125. Don't think he's going to have it up here either. And Adrian Yanez should be able to just find the chin at some point. And, if he doesn't knock him out, he's probably going to run away with it on damage, in my opinion. I just don't think Salvador is very good. I think Yanez is a good boxer. He's just been matched up against, a guy who's another good boxer in Rob Font, who has a ton of experience, and then Jonathan Martinez, who knows how to kick your legs off. So, yeah, he should be able to get this win. And if he doesn't, it's going to be sad times for Adrian Yanez. But that being said, I've never seen a fighter go knockout loss, minus 375 favorite against a fighter too. So yeah, I don't know. Definitely not betting the money line here. Probably look at some kind of prop.
Yeah. I liked Vinicius Salvador when he was coming into the UFC.
He had a little hype.
I watched that Contender Series fight. I'm like, damn, this guy's solid. Like, he's got some quick little hands.
Before we knew what Shannon Ross was.
Knocked out this Shannon Ross dude. And now that's his last win. And Shannon Ross is on a 3-fight KO losing streak since that fight. So it's 4 in a row, technically. But yeah, his run in the UFC hasn't been, much to write home about. That power that we saw in the Contender Series is not there, because Shannon Ross ain't across from him. Loses to Victor Altamirano and loses to CJ Vergara. And honestly, you watch the guy fight, it's really not that impressive. Like, nothing really jumps off the charts. But shit, for Adrian Yanez, man, you better get this thing done. Because if you don't, boy, you're looking like a complete fraud. Because we should have saw this coming. Like, Adrian Yanez, the wins he was picking up before he fought Rob Font, like Tony Kelly. Yeah, Tony Kelly, come on.
Yeah,
like, you knock out Tony Kelly and then you go to Rob Font, and we should have saw that coming. But yeah, either way, should be a win for Adrian Yanez. But honestly, if you look at like the skill level, I don't think it's like a crazy different skill level. But Adrian Yanez, I think he'll just have a little bit more pop, faster, cleaner boxing. The only thing I hate about his game is just really no kicks. Like, his kicks got exposed against Jonathan Martinez. I know Salvador has some decent kicks. He was a big flyweight, like tall, lengthy. So he's not going to be undersized as far as height and reach go. Maybe a little bit when it comes to, filling out the whole 135. But yeah, Adrian Yanez is the pick. And Buddy needs a KO. Bad. Moving on, we got Umar C coming in as a big favorite against Antonio Trocoli. Both men making their UFC debut. Umar Sy is 9-0 out of France. Has 3 fights in KSW. If you don't know that promotion, pretty solid promotion. 3-0 in that promotion. 2 wins by decision, 1 by rear naked choke. Taking on Antonio Trocoli. If you don't know, Antonio Trocoli is Mackenzie Dern's new boyfriend, I believe. He is 6'5", 82-inch reach, 12-3 professional record. Has not fought since November of 2021. And his Contender Series fight was July of 2019. So almost 5 years ago, this man was on the Contender Series. In that fight on the Contender Series, he got a round 1 submission win. And then he gets popped for a bad drug test. And the UFC says, yeah, that contract, not going to happen. Goes back to the regional scene almost or over 2 years later, picks up a win. And now almost 2.5 years after that, he finds himself in the UFC against Umar Sy, who, if you watch tape on him, looks fairly well-rounded. Does have a couple wins by decision, like I said, so he's not like a first-rounder bust type of guy. And it looks like he might be propped up to get a win here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, first, these are 2 of the biggest 205ers you're going to find. 6'5". They're both big and jacked. And, I think it's going to be a fun fight because on one hand, like C is going to want the fight on the feet. He does have some submission wins on his record, but his striking is really good. I think it's powerful. His boxing has looked good. But if you look at Trocoli, like a lot of fights, he'll come straight across the octagon and shoot a double leg. Like he might throw a few strikes, but he looks very stiff in doing that. So, if he can land the takedowns, I think he is going to have the better jiu-jitsu. And if he's on top, like I said, he's a big guy. He's very strong and powerful. Maybe he could rack up some control time or even find some kind of submission. But I just don't think his takedowns are that good from what I've seen, at least. And I know it's against lower level of competition. And when he has fought in better guys like Diego Lima, he loses those fights. So I think he comes in here and he struggles getting the fight to the mat. And yeah, he can land some big shots on the feet, but I just think Umar Sy is going to be a little more technical. He's got a little more striking experience. He's got power as well. And I think he's going to lose the fight that way. But this is such a big unknown as well. Like these are 2 guys who have fought, decent enough level of competition, but you just never know once they get to the UFC. For Trocoli, you never know what he's been doing in the last 3 years. I mean, he's dating Mackenzie Dern. I doubt you're, focused on fighting 100% when you're dating Mackenzie Dern, but it's a good training partner and team for the jiu-jitsu department. So, I'm going to guess he's going to try to get the fight to the ground. I'm going to guess Umar Sy is going to want it standing. We'll see who wins that battle, but I am going to take Umar Sy. I do like the striking a lot more. And like I said, from what I've seen in past fights, Trocoli just doesn't seem like his wrestling is that great and technical. He's just a big, strong guy who can get guys down. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Both guys massive, though.
Yeah, I found out why Mackenzie Dern's striking has turned so bad because you watched Antonio Trocoli on the feet. It ain't pretty. And we know Mackenzie Dern, at one point, looked like her striking was looking pretty good. And then she gets rid of her striking coach. Looks like Antonio Trocoli is part of her training program now. And then she gets knocked out by Jessica Andrade and absolutely brutalized by Amanda Lemos on the feet. Antonio Trocoli, if this fight's on the feet, he's in some trouble. Really, his only path is to find some type of submission. And he does have some pretty damn good jiu-jitsu, but I don't think he's really picked up any good wins in his career. Like he was on a 3-fight losing streak against somewhat UFC level competition. And then he goes back and fights this 21-13 guy, this 2-6 guy, picks up a win on the Contender Series against this guy, Kenneth Berg, who really hasn't done anything in his career other than get a couple wins on the regional scene. Then his last win was against this guy, Resli Israel, who was 5'10" and is a true middleweight. If you look at his Tapology picture, you'll see what I'm talking about. The guy looks like an absolute bum. And he rear naked choked him in 2021. Umar Sy, I think, wins this fight unless he gets subbed. I think he wins by knockout or a decision. maybe a submission for himself, but I think he should be able to win this fight. But we're talking UFC debut, so, you never really know until it happens. This almost feels like a Contender Series fight, like something
Oh, yeah.
they throw on a Contender Series, both guys making their debut, and, you get a big favorite that could go out there and shit in the apple pie, but I'll take it for the pick. Moving on, we got Chaos Williams coming in as a slight favorite against Carlston Harris. Carlston Harris coming off 2 wins. His last time out was against none other than Jeremiah Wells, where he pulled a win out of his hat. He was down 2 rounds, was getting wrestled up, and then he locks in an anaconda choke in round number 3. Here he is facing Chaos Williams, who scared everybody who had parlays with Chaos Williams in it when he took on Rolando Bedoya and won by split decision. Rolando Bedoya put that man through the ringer, and then in his next fight, loses to Song Kenan. So that does not look good for Chaos Williams. But he is a slight favorite here. Co-main event spot, Carlston Harris 36. Chaos still only 30. More UFC level experience for Chaos Williams, I believe. 7 fights. Yep. Interesting fight. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it is interesting. Because Chaos Williams obviously going to be looking for a bounce back spot. The guys he's beaten in the UFC, Bedoya, I thought honestly he lost the fight. He slowed down, was getting rocked, getting his body ripped up. I was surprised he walked away with the win there. Loses a split decision before that to Randy Brown. It's a understandable loss. Randy Brown's very long. He's tall. He's hard to deal with. Beating Matthew Simmelsberger hasn't aged the best. Miguel Baeza knocked him out, and after that one, everyone kept talking like, "Oh, Chaos Williams, all this power. He's a big knockout artist." On and on and on. But up against a guy like Carlston Harris, who really his only loss by KO comes to Shavkat Rakhmonov, who is everybody knows is surging to the top of the division. I do think Carlston Harris is a tough enough guy. Like that's the only time he's ever been dropped in the UFC, and he's fighting guys like Jeremiah Wells and Jared Gooden, Impa Kasanganay. He has a lot of good higher level experience to be going up against Chaos Williams with. And Impa Kasanganay won the PFL championship. He rocked him and dropped him in that first round and got the knockout. So, he's beaten good guys. And like I said, Jared Gooden took him down 5 times. Jeremiah Wells' fight was very interesting because Wells was dominating him, had 3 takedowns in the fight, a ton of control time, almost had him a submission locked up on him. And then out of nowhere, Carlston Harris gets him in an anaconda choke. And I thought, I don't know if you thought Jeremiah Wells was completely fine, but I thought he was just kind of relaxing and just staying calm. And next thing you know, he's completely unconscious. So Carlston Harris has that sneaky, danger to him where he can catch you with a shot if you come in, or, if you want to get into a little grappling exchange with him, he can submit you as well. I just think Chaos Williams has got to be very careful here, because if he comes out here thinking he's going to get a big knockout and can't finish the job in the first round and waste too much energy, Carlston Harris is a guy that's going to run around the octagon. He's not going to throw a lot of volume, but his cardio is good enough to where he'll last all 3 rounds. He'll land some decent shots on you. And if he just takes your back once, he's got some pretty good jiu-jitsu. He knows what he's doing down there, and I think he's going to be a lot better than Chaos Williams if this fight goes to the ground. Minus 130, though, on Chaos Williams, I understand why people are betting it. I do think this is kind of a buy low spot on him, even though he won his last fight against Bedoya. It doesn't really feel like it. I think after that, maybe he was humbled a little bit. He's been working harder. He's got to come back and get a win here. But for Carlston Harris, man, he hasn't been an easy out for anybody, and only loss in the UFC comes to Shavkat. So I'm tempted to take a little shot on the dog here. I know Chaos, outside of that striking and a little bit of power, I just don't know where he's going to if he can't knock Harris out, I don't know where he's going to beat him really. Like Chaos has some decent volume, but he also gets hit a lot. And like we saw against Bedoya, if you can start landing shots, like this guy's going to slow down. So if you slow down against Carlston Harris towards the end of the fight, I think you're going to give him a shot and you're going to leave the door open for him to make this very close, kind of like Bedoya did, or even finish the show by some kind of submission late in the fight. So yeah, give me Carlston Harris here to kind of surprise some people.
Yeah, Chaos Williams just looks like a guy that would knock you out, man. Like
Yeah, he does.
He looks scary as hell. And some of his knockouts in the UFC look scary as hell. Like it looks like at some points he could just touch you and you go down, but at in a lot of his fights, he can hit guys for 100 times and they don't really seem to phase. Skill for skill, I think Carlston Harris has him here. The only thing I'm a little scared of is Chaos Williams not really respecting anything that's coming back to him, because I don't know how Carlston Harris has knocked anybody out, to be honest. Like the way he punches, I don't understand it. It looks like he hits people with like this part of his fist, like he's slapping guys like this. I don't know what it is. It's weird. But he does have a decent submission game, decent technical striking, other than the way he lands his punches. And honestly, he's got some pretty decent wins under his record. Like, Impa, that's a good win. Jeremiah Wells is a decent win. Jeremiah Wells is as dangerous as they come as far as, the hands go. Carlson was able to avoid it. He did get grappled up, but I don't think Chaos Williams is doing that in this one. And then you look at his regional scene, beat Wellington Turman, and even beat Michel Pereira. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the dog. I think overall, I think he's just got him skill for skill. But if this does turn into, some type of boxing match, then it gets a little dicey. I think Carlston Harris needs to mix in, every level of mixed martial arts in this one to pull off a win. I would love to see him try to look for some type of submission, because Chaos, he can find himself in those at some point. And I just think you're avoiding, the most danger if you would, try to grapple this guy up. So I'll take Carlston for the pick, but it's a pretty fairly lined one, I would say.
Definitely.
Moving on to the main event, Edson Barboza coming in as a slight dog against Lerone Murphy. Murphy, 32 years of age, still undefeated, 13-0-1. That one comes to Zubaira Tuhugog, which was a draw, a split draw at that. And since then, he's on a 5-fight win streak. Last fought Josh Kulabau in July of 2023. So last year, it was a decision win and a pretty dominant one at that. And as I said at the beginning of the show, Edson Barboza, 2-fight winning streak for him. And he's been on a nice little run here. Knockout win against Billy Q and a main event win against Sadiq Youssef. You thinking on this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one because, Lerone Murphy is a guy that I started betting him when he fought Amir Khani, and I took him inside the distance, and he wins that in the second round. And then I took Gabriel Santos. I faded Lerone Murphy, and I thought I won that. It was a split decision win for Lerone Murphy. He was taken down 5 times. He did probably land the better shots on the feet. It was very close. And then he beats Josh Kulabau. Josh Kulabau, though, is after that lost to Danny Silva, who is making his debut. I don't necessarily think that's the best win in the world. And now you're getting a guy in Edson Barboza, who is a very good striker, who has fought every single person you could possibly imagine in this weight class. At 145, Edson Barboza might be one of the most dangerous strikers that's ever fought there. He is a little bit older now, obviously, coming off of a win over Sadiq Youssef, which was absolutely insane. Showed he still got a chin. And then before that, the Billy Quarantillo knockout that we were at in Kansas City. So Edson Barboza's got a little momentum behind him as well. For Lerone, if he stands at range with Edson, this could kind of look like the Sadiq Youssef fight all over again, because really we haven't seen Lerone Murphy in a 5-round fight at this level. Sadiq had some success early, had Edson extremely hurt, almost finished, and then the tables just kind of turned as the fight went over, and that veteran experience really showed from Edson Barboza. Lerone, he's got obviously some power in his hands. We've seen him land some big shots. He does have that grappling element, and he averages some takedowns per fight at a pretty high percentage. He's a strong kid. I think he's going to have to mix some of that in against Edson here, because Edson, if you stand with him, he will kick your leg off. He'll go to the body. He's got some of the nastiest body kicks I've ever seen in mixed martial arts. You start dropping your hands, and he's going to come upstairs with it. He's just a very, very dangerous striker all around. Murphy, though, we've seen him against Josh Kulabau. He'll mix in timely takedowns. I honestly, I think he's going to have to go that route in this fight because, Edson, like I said, I don't know. For me, he's just the more dangerous fighter. Lerone Murphy, younger, obviously, but Edson just finds ways to win, and he finds ways to hang out in the fight and not get finished. And if you waste all your energy trying to finish him, he's just such a vet. He's going to grind it out. So I want to take Edson Barboza for the pick. Like I said, I haven't been the best at picking these Leroy Murphy fights, so maybe it bites me again here. But this is kind of based off the odds. Like Leroy Murphy minus 160 seems like a little steep to me, getting this kind of bump up in competition for one against the guy who has this much experience, against the guy who's this dangerous. And now you're a big favorite. It just doesn't really do it for me. So I'm going to take the dog.
Yeah, this almost seems like a trap, honestly, because it seems like all signs would point to Barboza as an underdog because he's got the 5-round experience. Lerone Murphy, I mean, his best win is Douglas Silva de Andrade, would you say? Like, that's probably his best
Probably.
win. And that dude's a 135er. And Barbosa's an X155er. So a lot bigger. He's got a lot of experience. You're probably not going to outclass him on the feet. Like, I don't think Lerone Murphy's going to outclass him on the feet. I think Lerone's probably going to mix in the takedowns. And I don't know if he's going to be able to keep him there or put him away. So plus 120 on Edson Barboza seems like a trap. Like, it seems like it just looks too obvious. But yeah, it just makes sense to me. You know, like Lerone's never went 5 rounds. We just saw last time out against Sadiq. He weathered the storm and he got rocked early, but he was able to weather it and end up winning over 5 rounds. And Lerone, I don't even know if he can hurt Barboza that way because the only guys he's put away, Ricardo Ramos and Makwan Americani. Everybody finishes Makwan after a round. So yeah, I mean, I like Lerone Murphy, but I just haven't really seen enough to really put him as a favorite over Edson in a 5-round scenario at this point, So I'm gonna go Edson.
It's kind of make or break here, like to see like what Leroy Murphy's all about because he's on a little bit of a win streak. You're getting a legendary name in the division, and now you're getting a main event. So if he can handle all that pressure and succeeds, I think the UFC's got something here. But this is Edson Barboza is a tough ass test for anybody coming up through the ranks. So I'm interested to see it. Plus 120 on Edson Barboza. It just seems like that's just an automatic bet when you see him as the underdog because just look at his last fight. Sadiq Youssef had some hype behind him, very well-rounded fighter. Like maybe that doesn't age the best now because we saw Diego Lopez just go out there and KO him in the first round. But Edson Barboza has beaten some very good fighters in his career. Dan Hooker, Beneil Dariush, Gilbert Melendez, Anthony Pettis, Paul Felder, Bobby Green. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Like this guy's been in there with everybody. So seems like this is a guy in Edson who's going to be very comfortable in this main event spot in a 5-round fight versus a guy who's just getting his feet wet in this kind of situation. So yeah, I'm going to take the dog.
Man, Lerone was minus 140 against Josh Kulabau.
That's crazy. And dude, all the money was on Lerone too. Like this line did not move. I thought Kulabau was going to come out and maybe steal it and expose him a little bit, but nah, not at all.
Yeah, like I know he dominated that fight, but he's minus 160 now against Edson, who's a lot better than Kulabau. It just seems weird. Seems very weird. So
well, and the other thing, like Gabriel Santos comes in against Murphy and gives him like all he can handle, takes him down 5 times, lands some good shots. And then Gabriel Santos goes out and gets his ass beat by David Onama and gets knocked out, in the second round. So yeah. I don't know. It's really hard. Lerone Murphy looks good in his fights, but it's very hard to gauge exactly where he's at as far as like what level right now, because he's younger in his career still. He's younger in the UFC. So this will be a good test. I can't wait for this one.
Yeah.
Shitty card with a great main event.
Yeah, I like the matchup. Those are the breakdowns and the picks for UFC Vegas 92. Once again, if you want the bets, jump into Home Fight Picks Premium Membership. The link is down in the description below. Appreciate you for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit the like and the subscription button for us. Appreciate the love on the last video. And if you want to follow us at Home Picks on IG to keep up with all the updates, at HeyJob Picks on the medias for me. Where can they find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
Till next time, the Double Egg signing out.